Welcome to Guerrilla Radio, recorded June 10th, 2026. While UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk demanded Monday the United States lift sanctions against Cuba immediately. The High Commissioner blamed the oil embargo in place since January for killing children, saying the severe sanctions violate basic principles of international human rights law. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio charges the Caribbean island nation is, as well as being a threat to the superpower's security, quote, one of the leading sponsors of terrorism in the entire region. His State Department declared a national emergency to invoke the oil embargo coming atop America's 67-year-long blockade, creating, according to Turk, a humanitarian crisis endangering the lives of all citizens. Randy Caravaggio is a longtime organizer with the Victoria Friends of Cuba. Randy and his comrades have transported vital medical and other necessary supplies to Cuba for more than 30 years and were there earlier this year doing the same. Randy Caravaggio in the first half. And as well as traveling to Cuba, the Victoria Friends of Cuba also do banner drops on Victoria's busiest highway every week, host film screenings, and promote concerts and special events to raise money for their work. There will be just such a special happening coming up June 25th at Broadview United Church in Victoria. David Rovics is an itinerant musician and prolific songwriter. He's sat in, stood up, and faced down the powers that should not be on every issue of import you can imagine. He's been compared to Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, Phil Oakes, and every uncompromising musical advocate of the human condition of the last century. David's catalog is immense, running many hundreds of songs long, and his devoted fan base hundreds of thousands deep. His unparalleled embrace of AI for activism is both courageous and a challenge to those eschewing innovation despite the costs. He's just back from a spring tour in Europe, and he'll be playing up and down the island and over on the mainland too, through June and into July. David Rovics, minstrel of our Titanic times in the second half. But first, Randy Caravaggio shining light on Cuba in its darkest hour. Welcome back to the show, Randy.
My pleasure to be here once again. Thanks, Chris.
Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, the subject matter notwithstanding. A couple of days ago, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, demanded Monday the United States lift sanctions against Cuba immediately. What's the situation? What are your friends in Cuba telling you about what's going on the ground there?
Well, I just talked to one of our contacts there today, and I asked him what is the worst part of it all. And basically, and are they able to get the main necessities? And he said that basically there's water, there's food, there's all kinds of stuff. The problem is that the prices are so high that most people cannot afford it. Now, of course, they have blackouts up to 2 days. The transportation, communication, healthcare, schools, I mean, anything you can think of is fully being critically affected. And that's where you mentioned, the UN rapporteur that basically, and they've stated this numerous times, this is nothing new. I mean, the blockade is the ultimate aggression that the U.S. is putting on to basically make the whole system collapse and get some of the folks that may not be in support of the government to rebel. That's basically the whole idea. But if things continue the way they are, the Cubans, the overwhelming majority, will not give in. But obviously there are people that are suffering heavily, and some of them, of course, they're blaming the government. But the overwhelming majority are not. They know exactly where this hardship is coming from. And of course, that was stated by the UN rapporteur, that basically the blockade is killing people, it's starving people, it's making people suffer, and the whole economy is basically down to the ground. So it's a very critical situation. And I believe that what's happening is that the United States, since day one, when they did impose the blockade, that was the whole idea, is to get the support off the government and then make people scream, and then they can go in and do an invasion. That's basically what it boils down to.
The United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner, they announced that the life expectancy of Cuban children has dropped to 9.9 per 1,000 births. This they are blaming on the situation due to the embargo and the increased blocking of fuel supplies.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. But I mean, there's more children suffering and dying. There's all kinds of people that can't get, surgery. There's all kinds of people that can't get medicine. There's all kinds of machines that are not operating in hospitals and all over the place. It's a very drastic situation. We talk about these things in words, but in actual facts, the situation is very drastic, and that's the whole idea of the blockade is that it is cruel, it is illegal, it is genocidal, and that's what's happening. I mean, there's places where they go in with bombs and drop bombs and kill people. This one is a different way of doing the same thing, and that is just strangling the whole economy so that you can't do anything. I mean, these people now, there's blackouts up to 2 days. So I said, well, how do you guys cook? I mean, obviously, and they said, well, the only thing we've got is wood and charcoal, but a bag of charcoal is $10 a bag. Now, that's one third of what Cubans used to get per month when working. So now the industries are shut down, like factories and so on and so forth. The transportation is all pretty much shut down except for some electrical stuff and solar stuff. But, they don't have electricity. So how are you going to recharge your battery? Schools are mainly shut down. Many hospitals, they can't operate because of the fuel. We're talking about a serious matter here.
Well, we talked a couple months ago, and at that time, Mexico's President Scheinbaum was saying that Mexico was going to defy the American oil embargo and send oil anyway. I don't think that's happened as far as I've heard. Has Mexico managed to make good on Scheinbaum's promise?
Just yesterday, there was a shipment of I don't know how many hundreds of tons that Guyana and Mexico sent, but that was no fuel. It was humanitarian aid. So, and there's quite a bit of humanitarian aid coming from solidarity organization, churches, unions from all over the planet basically. But oil has not gone there now for about 4 months. The last tanker was from Russia, and that only lasted for about 10 days. So, as I stated once before, that basically they can produce up to 40% of their necessity. From 5% last year, they went to 10% on solar. But there's still, a drastic minus of 60% that they don't have. So, and there's other things involved in that, like the tourist industry is totally down. The Canadian government, although they voted against the blockade for over 30 years, in their website, they're stating that Canadians should stay away from Cuba, and all airlines, Canadian airlines, have been stopped, and that was a major asset to the Cuban economy. That's all gone. There was just last week, there was Visa and MasterCard. They were pushed to stop all activities in Cuba. There's been all kinds of different companies, such as the one in Canada, Sherritt Company, who was mining nickel. That has been stopped also. So this is a very, very serious matter. They want to go in there and just wipe the whole bloody country out.
Well, and on the Russian support, now a second tanker was en route, the Universal, carrying 270,000 barrels of diesel. And then it, for some reason, got held up and stopped in the Atlantic. It is reported by the Moscow Times that the tanker is a sanctioned tanker, sanctioned by the U.S., European Union, British, Swiss, and Canadian governments. And I don't know what role that had in stopping the tanker's delivery, if it was sanctions against Russia, but I imagine it was more to do with the sanctions against Cuba and military threats, presumably by the Americans.
I think that's what's taken place is that basically any ships that go there, if they are registered into private hands, Well, I mean, they would be sanctioned that if they do go to Cuba, they can't do any deals with the United States anywhere around the world. And so those types of tankers and ships are going to be very afraid of basically going to Cuba and risking their whole operation. So the only other way I can see that there's going to be any fuel going to Cuba is just like the Mexican one of the last time, that they basically had to put their Navy beside the tanker and make sure that that went in there. But I don't know. The Russians and the Chinese and the Mexican and whoever else are not willing to I guess get into that kind of situation. These people, they can bomb you. That's what they've been doing all over the world. So it's a very drastic situation. I think with time, I think it will eventually get resolved. But the Cubans are suffering. That's what's happening.
Well, on Monday, Raul Castro, Fidel's brother, celebrated his 95th birthday in Havana. A few weeks ago, the Americans indicted him on charges including murder for the 1996 shoot down of the plane operated by the so-called Brothers to the Rescue organization. Do you want to describe briefly, Randy, who Brothers to the Rescue are or were, and what transpired way back then?
The indictment asserts that Raul and others were responsible for the shooting down of the civilian planes operated by the Florida-based exile group Brother to the Rescue, as you stated. This was in 1996. It resulted in the deaths of 4 individuals. While claiming that the planes, this is the U.S., claiming that the planes were outside of Cuban airspace. They don't bother to state that Jose Basulto, the well-known terrorist trained by the CIA, was the founder of Brother to the Rescue. He was using the organization as a terrorist organization to oust the Cuban government. Brothers to the Rescue had flown over Cuban airspace multiple times, dropping leaflets on Cuba's territory to incite people to rise against the Cuban government. On each of those occurrences, the U.S. government was warned by the Cuban government that actions would be taken by Cuba if they didn't stop. So we're not getting the whole story here, is that those planes were in Cuban airspace, and they were there for one purpose and one purpose only: to incite people to rebel against the government. And they also threatened that they would use bombs instead of leaflets, because they used to, drop leaflets. And at one point, they even stated that instead of leaflets, they would drop bombs. So what is a government supposed to do if such things occur? Well, they finally shut them down. And now, after 30 years, they're going after Raul. So it's just the only way that they have been able to maintain this blockade is through lies and deception. And most people haven't bought it. The overwhelming majority of Americans are not in support of what the American government has done in regards to Cuba. So, this is just another way to keep going on their lives, to maintain this blockade, and to hopefully, according to them, to hopefully get rid of the government and reestablish the country as it was previously. That's basically what it boils down to.
Well, if you've just tuned in, you're listening to Guerrilla Radio. I'm speaking today with Randy Caravaggio. Randy is a longtime organizer with the Victoria Friends of Cuba. He and his comrades have transported vital medical and other necessary supplies to Cuba for more than 30 years, and they were there earlier this year as well. They also have put on numerous events here in Victoria to raise funds for that purpose. Well, Randy, the president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, was at the commemoration celebrations for Raul's 95th birthday this week, and he says, much as with the Brothers to the Rescue, that the Americans are trying to, quote, build a pretext for military aggression against Cuba. On the very same day, in May, that the indictment against Raul came down, there was reports from the States that the USS Nimitz, the carrier, the aircraft carrier group, was heading towards Cuba. Well, I don't know if they actually did that and that was just propaganda, or do you have any idea of any military preparations, overt ones around Cuba?
Well, the thing that we do know that there's now more U.S. Military people and material around the Caribbean more than ever before. So, and Trump stated now very openly that once they settle with Iran, that the next one would be Cuba. So there's a big concern with all of that. The Cubans know it, but at the same time, Cubans are saying that it's what it's going to have to be a bloodbath because they're not going to just roll over. And it's different than Venezuela, it's different than Iran, it's different than any other place. Yes, we do know that it's a small island with only 10 million people, while the United States spends close to $1 trillion on its militarism. Cuba spends 1 billion. So it's it's ridiculous that Trump keeps stating that Cuba is a U.S. national threat. That is as much of a high lie that you can get. You can't get any worse than that. So yeah, they can go in there and bomb the whole thing, but they're going to have to kill a lot of people. And because, like I said, the Cubans, I've heard them over and over. We've been around, we've been in the streets, we've been in organizations, we've been in offices, and they're not just going to roll over and do that because they also know what comes next. And we've seen Haiti when they kidnapped the president, sent him to Africa, and then what happened to Haiti? It became a no-country zone, and it still is that way. We've seen a number of countries. We've seen Libya. They went in there. They were going to bring liberation and all kinds of human rights. And what did we see there? And what are we still continuing to see there? We've seen Palestine. I mean, how many more do we have to see? And the Cubans are very, very educated. The overwhelming majority of Cubans know what's going on, so they're not going to go back to where they were before. So, although things are very harsh, very desperate, but what the United States, if they ever go in there and take over the country, it's not going to be. It's going to be even worse than a whole lot worse than what it is now. So that's a situation. What they want is the political aspect of Cuba. A little country like that, being a socialist country, threatens their whole system. That's what it boils down to. And they can't, I mean, Cuba has been there for the last 65 years, and they've never threatened anyone. It's not a threat to no country. They've always stood for peace, for justice, for education, healthcare. I mean, you name it. That's what they stood for. They want to get rid of that because a capitalist system, such as we are seeing now, it can't have any of that because a little bit of that could destroy them. And I think that's what the situation is that we have more wealth today than ever before under this system, and yet they can't equalize the situation where there's no homeless or there's more education or there's more health care. They just don't give a damn about that. They want full control by a few people, and they want to control the whole planet. And Cuba is totally the opposite of that. And I think that's what the threat is.
Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, considers Cuba a threat. He said as much, and his government, declared a national emergency, saying that it was Cuba posed a threat to the American security, and this is what they used to gin up the embargo in January.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, they have to just, fabricate lies after lies and deception after deception to maintain whatever they're trying to do. But I think the overwhelming majority of people all across the world does not buy it. I have to state that at this point, in our little group in Victoria, we have received support that we've never received before. I mean, people are constantly supporting us in all kinds of ways. Just this last weekend, I was in Toronto, at a solidarity conference where over 30 different organizations across Canada came together. And the support has been tremendous. And we also have to be careful on what even we say about what we're sending to Cuba, because we believe that the American government are going to try, well, as they have in the United States already, criminalize solidarity groups that are sending humanitarian aid there. And there's much of humanitarian going there. But in numerous cases, we don't hear anything about it, because if we make a big deal, they will start stopping the ships and criminalizing people, just like they have with all kinds of other things. That's the situation. But the fact of the matter remains that even the countries in the Caribbean, such as Jamaica, for instance, or what was it, Guatemala, for instance, they had Cuban doctors there, and they sent them back home because there was so much pressure from the United States. Now, we're talking about the leadership of some of these countries that are giving in, but the actual public, people, they know what's going on. So, it's just these, governments that they're able to twist their arms and make them do whatever they want. But the people in general, the overwhelming majority, are with Cuba. There's no question about it.
Randy, we're fast out of time, but one of the things that you guys do to keep going, as I mentioned in the introduction, is hold events. You've got a couple events coming up here in Victoria. Cuba After Castro film screening. That's June 19th at the BCGEU Hall at 2994 Douglas Street. You guys have been working out of there for a long, long time. And also, what I'm very excited about, especially considering that my next guest following this segment is your guest for a musical event Thursday, June 25th. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we hang banners every week. This week it'll be on a Sunday at the Roger pedestrian overpass. We hang banners there so everyone can see. As you stated, we'll have the film, and then David Rovics and Camille Emmanuel in concert 7 p.m. on Thursday, January the 25th, Broadview United at 3703 Alden Street. What I would like to say is that anyone that would like to purchase tickets for that concert, just go on our website and just put Victoria Friends of Cuba. It'll bring you on the website. Go to events, and you can electronically purchase a ticket for that concert. But before we go, Chris, it's very, very important for us to state that the Canadian government has to stop supporting this blockade against Cuba. We now have no Canadian airlines going to Cuba. On the Canadian government website, basically they're stating that Canadians should stay away from Cuba. And that is just a support for this blockade. Although the Canadian government has voted against the blockade at the United Nations General Assembly for the last 30 some odd years, they are helping the Americans to keep this blockade on. We have Canadian companies now that have been stopped from operating there. We have airlines stopped. We have to write letters to the Prime Minister, to all our MPs as much as possible, phone, write letters, and state that we should not be supporting this blockade, and we should be supporting Cuba to allow airlines to go back and to send fuel, Canadian fuel, shipments of fuel to Cuba. We need to do that very, very strongly. That's very important for us as neighbors and supporters of Cuba to do that. Our government has to fall in line with that.
Again, David Rovics is going to be at Broadview United, 3703 Aiden Street. That's a really nice church, actually. And that is Thursday, June 25th. E-transfer for your advance tickets to Victoria Friends of Cuba.wordpress.com. Thanks a lot, Randy, for coming on again, and thanks for all the work you guys are doing over there.
Well, thanks so much for having us, and we'll continue our solidarity with our neighbors.
I don't doubt it. I'm going to take a brief break here. I'm going to play a little David Rovics as lead in to our discussion. Thanks again, Randy.
Thank you.
Moscow, Tokyo, New York. Guerrilla Radio is everywhere, all the time.
Chicago, Jakarta, Helsinki, Cape Town, Sao Paulo, Manchester, Bangalore, and somewhere in Russia I can't actually remember the name of.
We have a liberal tradition. We believe in Oxford debates. We're all free to critique the affairs of state. You can complain about the Greens, speak your mind on the Tories, if you don't like the Liberals or the Union aristocracy. You can have a rally against Muslim immigration, protest against the Treasury with your perspective on inflation. You can protest Russia, protest against Ukraine, but all levels of the government will go utterly insane. If you criticize Israel, the Home Office may say you're a threat to public order, so you can't enter the UK. Come as an academic, come visit as a tourist, as long as you obey the rules, as long as you get the gist. If you understand the principle that you say just what you like, as long as it's not anti-Zionist, then we'll take your mic. If you criticize Israel, the Home Office may say you're a threat to public order, so you can't enter the UK.
And welcome back to Guerrilla Radio, as well as traveling to Cuba. The Victoria Friends of Cuba also do banner drops on Victoria's busiest highways every week, host film screenings, and promote concerts and special events to raise money for their work. There will be just such a special event happening coming up June 25th at Broadview United Church in Victoria. David Rovics is an itinerant musician and prolific songwriter. He's sat in, stood up, and faced down the powers that should not be on every issue of import you can imagine. He's been compared to Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, Phil Oakes, and every uncompromising musical advocate of the human condition in the last century. David's catalog is immense, running many hundreds of songs long, and his devoted fan base hundreds of thousands deep. His unparalleled embrace of AI for activism is both courageous and a challenge to those eschewing innovation despite the costs. He's just back from a spring tour in Europe, and he'll be playing up and down the island and over on the mainland too through June and into July. Welcome back to the program, David.
Thank you, Chris. So glad to be back. And that was just a marvelous introduction, I have to say.
Oh, go on. David, I just led into this segment with your recently released tune, You Can't Enter the UK. How was yours and Kamala's entry received there?
We did not have any problems crossing any borders on this tour. I never know when I might be on some list and having a problem, but so far so good as far as Europe has been for my whole time traveling there. The borders weren't any problem, but there's a lot of other, things about the state of affairs there that were interesting. As far, we were really wondering whether we were going to get arrested, in various places because of the songs we're doing, because actually they're illegal in Germany and in England. Some of the songs we're singing are illegal. And under their laws, they're very strict laws about speech and perceptions of terrorism, sympathizing or whatever. Songs like Globalize the Intifada, From the River to the Sea, I Support Palestine Action, those are all arrestable offenses. So we didn't have any problems, though. But we were both wondering whether we might.
Well, and that's what I'm interested, right? Even as we're speaking right now, in Canada, there are similar laws going through the House of Parliament to have the same effect as we've seen, I think, especially in Britain. I've been watching, I guess a big window on the world for me these days is my handheld. I'm looking at Twitter and watching women being brutalized by goons in Germany and other European capitals that, for the temerity of uttering the sentences you just mentioned, or maybe just for carrying a keffiyeh or wearing one. Did you get a sense of that while you were there?
I mean, that was what was so interesting about being there. Was like I've seen those same videos that you're talking about, and it seems like when I'm looking at Instagram and my feed, somehow I'm often seeing people getting brutalized and arrested and harassed and all sorts of things like that in places like Germany, particularly in Germany, for wearing a keffiyeh or a Palestine flag T-shirt and stuff like that. So I was really wondering what the atmosphere was like. And I really feel like, although those things that we see on Instagram are happening, they are not, that's not the norm. That's not, generally people treat you with respect and decency. And me and Kamala were going all over Germany wearing Palestine flag T-shirts and keffiyehs. It was a little cold for T-shirts when we were there, so the keffiyeh was the only indication of our politics and such. But that's a big no-no in Germany, they say. But certainly we got some possibly dirty looks. I wasn't even sure, but we didn't get any other problems. And that was true everywhere else we went, where they have the same kinds of restrictive speech laws and stuff. And I think while those things are happening to people, it's really we get a really severely distorted idea of reality from our Instagram feed and Facebook and TikTok and everything else. It's really distorted. And it really makes you gives. I mean, another thing, I think we talked about this last time I talked to you, but I was in Texas and Georgia last winter, and Arizona, and those are all places with a lot of Republicans, and I did not see in any of those places, I did not see a single MAGA hat or other sort of indication of support for Trump anywhere, like in the physical world. I only see that on the internet.
The bumper stickers are getting ragged. You look at them and I
Yeah,
vote Trump, 2016.
yeah,
But
yeah.
what about, I mean, beyond the gigs that you guys did, and you did a lot of gigs, you did almost 20, but outside of your performances, did you see like amongst people in the streets and that like-minded people wearing keffiyehs or people reacting with the opposite of dirty looks? I don't know if that would be, is that a clean look? I don't know. When they saw your keffiyeh, like smiling and nodding or whatever.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, but in Germany, not so much. Like pretty much most other places I go, I get, like, especially if I'm in an airport, pretty much anywhere in the world, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback for wearing a Palestine flag T-shirt or wearing a keffiyeh, but especially the Palestine flag T-shirts, I get a lot of positive reactions from people who are usually of some sort of visibly Arab or Muslim kind of background, but not always. It's often other white Westerners. But yeah, I get, and I get the positive reactions like overwhelmingly more than negative reactions. Like, actually, I never get negative reactions other than dirty looks, and that includes passing by the El Al area of the terminal in some airport I was at
The
a couple
Israel,
years
the
ago.
the Israeli national airline.
Yeah, I got a real dirty look. I mean, it was like a very, very, very communicatively dirty look. It was like, if we were in Israel, I'd be beating you right now, kind of dirty look, But like, they know we're
Were you
not in.
tempted to go stand in line as if you were gonna get on that one of their flights, just to
Tempted,
punk
very
it?
tempted. Yeah, just tempted to just stand there.
You wrote an extensive essay, Europe 2026 Spring Tour Reflections, talking about your experiences. And when you're just talking about being in Texas, you include that actually in the essay. But when you talk about the sort of difference between the real world and the world that is mediated for us through our devices and other places too, and you said, and I'll quote you, that there are moments in the course of my travels where up close, real life, physical observations of reality in a particular place and time have seemed so valuable. And in reading that, I just had to think, Can you imagine that sentence being read or heard by somebody 25 or 30 years ago? They would kind of look at you and go, what the hell? How else are you going to, perceive reality? But for us today, it's all too clear that the physical world seems to be disappearing, at least as our major source of information on what the world is and what our place in it is.
I mean, I think the main thing is like, I mean, if you recall your youth, I think we're roughly the same kind of age, right? When we were young, the internet didn't really exist, and but certainly mass media did exist, and the brainwashing was full on in the mass media in many different countries, very much including the U.S. But at least people might have some degree of awareness that they are being fed a line that the state or the powers that be or the corporations or whatever want them to be fed. They're being propagandized. People can have that kind of awareness around mass media. Whereas when it comes to the internet and your feed on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, people are under the severely mistaken impression that what they're getting is some kind of like representative feed coming from people that they are somehow or another friends or associated with. And so they get the idea that they're either getting some kind of realistic idea of what is happening in the places that are being that people are sending out videos about and texting about or whatever, but they're not. It's not at all realistic. It's totally controlled, suppressed, algorithmically shaped, information that we're getting. It's and I still don't think that most people even understand what the algorithms are, what an algorithm is, especially people older than me. They really don't understand how they're being manipulated on what those feeds saying.
I can attest to that, David, because I know that I am older than you, and I don't have a clue how these things operate. But I always take it for granted that it is pernicious and it's aimed to do me wrong. You know what I mean? And I don't know if
Yeah.
that is just because of the era that I grew up in, and I feel that my animosity, I would say, to technology and especially concentration of power that it represents carries over into general areas of technological development, and there's no bigger elephant in that room right now than AI. You have adopted AI, and we've talked about this in the past, and you write about it in this essay as well at length. But in this sense, in writing your songs using AI prompting and stuff like that, and especially with Suno, your collaborator, your avatar,
Mm,
but I'm thinking
yeah.
also about AI in the broader sense, and the AI and this invasion of these AI super factories, for lack of the right word, these data centers sucking up the juices literally from the earth and spewing out these ominous monotone hums and driving people absolutely insane. Wondering, about your perception of this new ish threat to humanity, I guess.
I mean, I guess I would say there are a number of different issues that are all very much related, but that in some ways need to be separated from each other in order to really have a useful discussion about the subject.
Mm.
Like, for example, the question of power use and water use by AI data centers. I think that really is a separate question from the overall sort of impact of this technology on society. And that itself is also a separate question from the morality and the ethics of AI, which is also a separate question from how we remunerate society or individuals or whatever for the commons that is being stolen from us by these corporations using AI and using every other form of technology. I mean, one of the fundamental things here, I think, is that there's in many ways, although many things about AI are new, in many ways, nothing is new about what's happening here. We're talking about big corporations coming up with a massively influential new technology that is taking the commons and marketing it back at us and making at a huge profit. But it's taking the cultural commons of the world and then selling it to us. And people who are like writers and musicians and other so-called content creators or whatever, they take a particular offense to having all their work stolen and then marketed at us all, because they generally feel like they have been getting the short end of the stick as far as all that goes for a very, very long time, like with the music industry and the TV industry and the film industry. None of it is aimed at, sort of allowing the actual people who are creating all this stuff to make a decent living. The money doesn't go to us, it goes to other people. And that's very much still the case with AI. So, like, there's still the problem with AI. There is the massive problem of capitalism. Same problem with the film industry and the music industry. It doesn't change with AI. It just gets worse. It just gets much more concentrated, intense. Like, because it's net because of the things you can do with it. Because it's an absolutely staggeringly amazing technology, and anybody that thinks otherwise obviously isn't using it. It's absolutely stunning. And anybody who has any kind of a skill set, you try finding an AI platform that makes use of your skill set and then see what you can do with it. And what coders say today, people who do computer programming, they're working at 5 to 20 times the speed that they used to work at, but producing just the same kind of quality work. And they're not coding themselves. They're telling the AI platforms what to code. That's the new way that this is working. Anybody who's still coding rather than telling an AI platform what to code, is probably, my age or older, and they just haven't, they're just not with it anymore. And as far as like trying out new technologies, they're on their way out of professional relevancy very quickly. But if you are an artist, visual artist, if you're a filmmaker, or if you're a musician, and you use the platforms that are that are designed for us artists to use, I mean, what you'll find, I think, mostly pretty quickly, if you apply yourself, is that you can create art that is just as good as anything you've ever done, and you can do it at a ridiculously faster speed and at a ridiculously higher quality in terms of production values and for a ridiculously lower cost. So, it is absolutely a completely disruptive technology. It will destroy so many industries almost completely. It's already doing that. It's already contributing to massive youth unemployment and all sorts of other problems. We can expect all that to get astronomically worse. But none of that is going to change if musicians stop using AI. I mean, or if I do, or, it's just like you can kill your television all you want, but television is going to be here to stay. Television is and has and will continue to have a massive impact on people's minds, no matter how many hippies like us might, not watch TV or smash their TV in public, or put on a bumper sticker on their car saying "kill your TV" or whatever. It's TV isn't going to go away. It never was going to go away. Neither is radio. Neither is the printing press, and neither is AI. We're just talking about technological progress, and for better or for worse, this is where technological progress is now got us to. It was all very well predicted for decades that we'd eventually get to this place, and here we are. There's the question of, is AI good at all? Is it good for us at all to have this kind of technology? And there's also the question of television, radio, the printing press, and a lot of other things. Are these things overall good or bad? I think, is war always bad, or are there any positive applications to this concept? Is it the same thing? What is imperialist carpet bombing of a country the same as resisting imperialism by means of whatever force is at your disposal, whether it's machine guns or rocket launchers or whatever else? I mean, there are a lot of tools that we have in our world and humanity, and tools are definitely not neutral. They have tendencies, they have certain kinds of impacts that they're likely to have, but whether they have a certain impact, and it often depends on how they're being used and who's using them and for what purpose. And it seems to me that as far as like AI goes, like we are currently right now in a fight for the future of the planet. I mean, Trump is trying really hard to start World War III, and Biden was trying pretty hard before him, but Trump's trying even harder, and that needs to be fought ideologically, through propaganda, through communication, through art, the most powerful form of communication in existence. It needs to be, we need to be talking about this stuff. We need to be singing about it, writing about it, communicating about it in film, in every other possible way we can. And the idea of not using AI technology to do that communication is doesn't make any sense to me, because we got hearts and minds to win. This is a war for the soul of civilization. This is a war for the future of the world, and it's not like it just started with Trump. It's been going on for a very long time. The future of humanity is at stake in terms of the climate, and whether the United States continues to burn coal or not, that matters to all of us, or it should. And if we're going to try to reach the American people and the people of any other part of the world, we need to do that in whatever ways we possibly can, and that might be effective. And it is definitely a concern of mine that this technology that I'm using all the time is certainly causing lots of unemployment among session musicians, producers, engineers, and all these other kinds of people that I used to have a lot more to do with than I do now. And that's a terrible thing. But for me and for so many other people using the technology, and this is not to say that this doesn't make it all okay, but for me and so many other people using it, we couldn't afford to hire a choir in the first place. I couldn't afford to hire an orchestra. I don't know a talented oud player. I don't know a rabat player. I have never even seen some of the instruments that I use on a daily basis in with Aitsuno. I could never form a band like the ones that I form all the time, involving some of the most amazing banjo players, oud players, rabat players, and hip hop artists. I mean, this is not something that would have been realistic for independent musicians ever. So we're talking about in terms of some of the complaints about AI music, and specifically, we're talking about the big time recording artists and labels, and they're the ones who have the most reason to be concerned, because it no longer costs $50,000 to make an album with totally professional quality production values and everything else. You can do it for a Suno account for $10 a month. Granted, you actually are a talented producer and and musician, and you know what you're doing, because otherwise you'll create AI slop. These platforms don't work unless you actually know what you're doing. That's why the internet is absolutely full of bad art, bad music, bad film, bad everything that's being made by people who don't know what they're doing, and they're playing with these amazing AI platforms, which you can be amazing at. I don't know, the old phrase was shining a turd. If you shine a turd, it's still a turd.
It's
you
polishing.
can be amazing.
Yeah,
you can polish a turd.
Yeah.
You may be good at you may have great technology, but if you don't know what to do with it, you're not going to be producing great music with it. It bears mentioning. I know you know this, but I write all the lyrics. For all the stuff I do with AI. And that's essential to why it's so good. Not to toot my own horn too hard here, but AI does not write good lyrics, and we can talk about why that is, and and of course it may change someday, but AI generally sucks at writing lyrics. Also, the AI mostly comes up with really bad music. I mean, people should be aware that if they're listening to Aitsuno, that every song you hear, you're listening to the 60th or 70th or 80th or 90th version of the song. That was the one that worked. I threw out all the other ones. And the reason why it's so good is because I know which ones don't work and I know which ones work. And the reason I know that is because I've been touring and performing for audiences for decades, and I know what kind of song is going to make someone cry. I know what kind of song is going to make somebody laugh. I know what kind of song is going to make somebody feel anger and want to go join a march, because I'm a professional. I've been doing this a long time, so I don't need to wonder anymore. When I write a sad song, when I write a song that makes me cry, I know it's going to make other people cry. I don't need to wonder, but when I hear Aitsuno play a song that I've written that I know is going to make people cry if it has the right kind of music, then I know that I hear the first 50, 60, 70 versions. I know none of those are going to make people cry. And then when I hear the one that will, I know that's the one. So that's my human professional contribution to the whole thing, which is why it works as well as it does.
Well, it's
People
good.
don't realize this.
Well, it's good to know that we still need humans after all. If you've just tuned in, you're listening to Guerrilla Radio. I'm speaking today with David Rovics, and David's a musician, as you can hear, a prolific songwriter, and he is just back from a tour of Europe, and he is just getting ready to come up to my neck of the woods here in British Columbia to do a number of gigs. I don't have it in front of me, David, but I do have the one in my city. That is Thursday, June 25th. You'll be traveling with Kamala, your accompanist.
Mm-hmm.
And you write in your essay about during the European tour, singing a lot of the Aisuno songs, which, of course, as you mentioned, the complexity of them and everything else, it's Aisuno kind of goes acoustic in a way. How was that?
Yeah.
How was that transition?
It's like so easy, and it's so, basically, because the kind of music I want to write is, people may say it sounds a lot like the stuff you do otherwise. It sounds like stylistically very similar, which I think is a weird thing to say because I don't think it's true. But when the people who do say that, I understand what they're talking about, because the people who say that are the people who are really into hardcore punk, or they're into electronic dance music, or they're into something totally different from what I do. And so when they hear Aitsuno, they think, oh, there's still banjos and mandolins in there. It sounds a lot like the kind of stuff you record, on your own. And, people, but there is truth to that too. And also because of that, the vast majority of songs that I write with Aitsuno are ready-made for me to sing myself. It's just a matter of changing the key. Figuring out the chords is easy because she's using the same kinds of chords I normally use too. There's, when it comes down to it, really, people may rather not admit this, especially the music industry, which is always trying to turn art into some kind of mysterious thing that only geniuses can produce. But the reality is there's only so many chord progressions out there, and they've all been used thousands, millions of times. There's only 12 notes in a standard scale in between the octaves, and only 8 notes in a standard scale. And the other ones are blue notes. You don't have that many options. You listen to classical music too. It's the same. You can have the same experience. Any genre of music you listen to, there's a repetitiveness to the genre because of various basic constrictions of the sort of musical world we're occupying. There's only so many notes between octaves. There's only so many chord progressions. And so what I've always found as an artist is I always have felt like my main strength is my lyric writing, although I love music and I'm a fairly accomplished guitarist, but it's the lyrics that come easily for me. And the music is always like, I know when it works, but it's a lot of work and a lot of time, and it often doesn't work. It takes a while to come up with something that works. And then every couple of years, throughout my career, I guess, I've been learning a new instrument or doing something along those lines, getting into a totally different style of music, sometimes with like real intentionality, and other times just because that's what happens when you like music. But to the extent that it's intentional, it's because it's hard to come up with interesting new music for your lyrics. So that's why is partly why I got into playing the electric cello 12 years ago again, and it's why I got into playing the bouzouki and the mandola, and it's why I got into punk rock 25 years ago. I'm always looking to shake things up musically, and this is just it's just part of that process using AI. And it's also not nearly as new as people think. I mean, I have been working with engineers in my albums who have been using AI assisted technologies for many years. It's just in recent years everybody knows about it, and everybody and the technology has gotten so much better. But it's been true for many years that there's been like AI platforms for, if you want to record a drum track to your guitar part and your guitar part is not in perfect rhythm, you can adjust the rhythm with AI. You can make the drum part sound like the drummer is playing with you live, when it's all just AI, giving the AI platform a minute to figure it all out, and then they rearrange the whole song in a way that most people would never notice.
Well, and it's also more accessible now, as you mentioned. Like people can be their own engineers at home for I don't know, affordably, and where that wasn't possible. David, we're fast out of time. I will mention again that the tour dates are up at davidrovics.com. It's Thursday, the 25th of June is the kickoff. That's here in Victoria, Broadview United Church, a very nice venue. I don't know if you've been there before, but it's a great venue with a nice big stage. You'll be playing out at Souk on the 26th, up Island in Cumberland on July 4th. You won't be in America for July 4th. And Soantula Island, BC at the Rec Center on the 7th, and Alert Bay on the 9th. That's a cool place too, on another small island. And over in the Big Smoke, Vancouver, on the 11th of July. Thanks a lot, David, for coming on and talking a little bit about your work with us again. David Rovics, ROVICS.com. Go there. It's an immense website full of stuff of interest, as well as the poster that I'll include in the notes of this show. Good luck with the tour, David.
Thank you, Chris. Great talking to you.
And thanks to Randy Caravaggio. You'll be playing your Victoria gig, I should mention again, in aid of Cuba, and it's part of all the great work you do and all the help that you bring to demos and every other progressive movement. Titan in our midst.
And Randy is the same, I would have to say. I know I didn't hear your interview with Randy, but he's an amazing organizer. And if we needed people, if we had just about 100 people like him in every city in the world, then we could totally, that would be enough to completely change the face of civilization for the better.
Yeah,
no question about it.
Yeah, 100 Randys.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
No.
Can you imagine that level of organizing capability?
Not in one room, anyway. I'm just kidding, Randy.
I want to see it.
Okay, David. I'll talk to you again, and I'll see you on the 25th here in Victoria.
Wonderful.
That's all I got for this week. Till the next time.
You can look around the world and the wars are everywhere. People running for the borders trying to get out of there. As bad as it is in Sudan or in the DRC, as horrific as it is in so many countries, there's only one where Western allies keep all the people inside. A concentration camp where they're committing genocide. There's only one place on the planet where no one can get out, where what we can see happening leaves absolutely no doubt. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. Yeah, you can wonder all day long how this could possibly be going on right now in the 21st century. You can wonder even more how the genociders could largely be descended from genocide survivors, but that's how it is. The facts are inescapable if your eyes are open and the facts are on the table. Can you spend $200 to buy a loaf of bread? Neither can the Palestinians, they're dying instead. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The killers know they don't need any fancy weaponry. Starvation and disease kills much more quietly. The plague is upon them. The rats are eating children. Sewage by the mattresses and nowhere they can run. All the infrastructure ruined, completely decimated. Nothing left in the ghetto but the emaciated. All the bodies buried beneath what used to be the plazas and what was once a living place called Gaza. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. Since the so-called ceasefire, thousands have died from being bombed and starved and beaten alive. The Black Death
that was a tea party compared to Gaza now. Only Auschwitz can compare. If you wanna look at how they're killing off the people so systematically, using all the latest high technology, industrial slaughter like the world has not seen since the days of Hitler's genocidal regime. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. The Holocaust is now. Who's going to stop it? And how?